Good afternoon, everyone. Happy National Student Athlete Day. My name's Lauren Pulte. I'm the Public Relations Director for Next College Student Athlete. I hope some of you were able to tune in to our earlier webinar featuring Lindsay Hamilton, Head of Mental Training for IMG Academy. For those of you who missed it, you can check our YouTube page for a full video soon. Right now, I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker for our Prioritizing Mental Wellness webinar series, Austin Hatch. Austin is a 2018 graduate of the University of Michigan, where he played 4 years on the men's basketball team. However, Austin's journey to Michigan is anything but typical. His story is one of tragedy, unimaginable loss, and triumph. In fact, if I told you his story, I don't think you'd believe me. It's hard to imagine what Austin's been through, but as the saying goes, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it, or in Austin's case, how you overcome it. Before we hear from Austin, let's watch ESPN's story on his unbelievable journey.
It's unbelievable to be here. After all that I've been through, to be able to finally make it to Michigan, put on that jersey, really is a dream come true.
For 20-year-old Austin Hatch, Chrysler Center at the University of Michigan has been a yearned-for destination. Not a finish line, a kind of promised land, reached only after a journey of biblical proportions.
Cleared flight level 220.
911. A plane just crashed.
And all of a sudden, big boom.
8 years later. Oh my gosh, it is unbelievable.
When you're millimeters away from death, you look at life through a different lens.
He is a walking miracle.
Let's just say that the situation didn't look good. But here we are.
Hatch on the right side. Gave up the dribble, had it knocked loose, and a foul called. Although will give Austin Hatch a chance to go to the free throw line. Bends the knees on its way, and it's good.
Yes,
what a moment for Austin Hatch. Down the line, gives him a big hug.
What he's gone through so far is miraculous. He said to me, Coach, the way I look, I've been so blessed through life. I've only had 2 really bad days in my life.
Around 6 p.m. on September 1st, 2003, an 8-year-old Austin boarded a Beechcraft 6-seater for a flight from the family cabin in Michigan to their home in Fort Wayne, Indiana. On board were Austin's mother, Julie, his 5-year-old brother, Ian, and 11-year-old sister, Lindsay. At the controls, his father, Dr. Stephen Hatch.
I was sitting shotgun with my father when some equipment failure took place. It just seemed to me that some of the lights on some of the screens went out.
At his father's instruction, Austin says, he checked the instrument panel with a flashlight. The engine was no longer working. The plane struck a utility pole and crashed just after 8 p.m. in Uniondale, Indiana. Fire swept through the passenger compartment. Dr. Hatch would suffer severe burns.
He threw Austin out of the plane and he tried to get the others out, and that is where the burns came from. So.
You saved Austin's life.
He did. What happened after that?
I don't want to get into that.
Austin's mother, his sister, and his brother would not survive.
My father and I would often go to the gravesite. He would just hug me and tell me how much he loved me and how thankful he was to still have me. And I would say the exact same thing. I mean, he told me, Austin, you know, we're just going to press on. That's what we're called to do.
The National Transportation Safety Board would attribute the accident to pilot error. Dr. Hatch would dispute that finding. He returned to work and to flying planes, as he had since 1997. Now, there was just Austin and his father and the game they both loved.
The best therapy we had was just being together. We'd spend long hours in the driveway. He would always make time to play me in one-on-one. And let me tell you, nothing felt better. The trash talk that would go back and forth between us, I mean, it was ridiculous.
Soon, there would be a new source of love and support. In 2004, Dr. Hatch met Kimberly Neal, single mother of 3, Brittany, Maria, and an Austin of her own. A romance blossomed.
I just remember seeing this picture she would put by her bedside, and I just kept asking her who these guys were, and she said, "You'll know soon, you'll know soon."
In May 2005, Austin was in the wedding party, as Stephen and Kim were married.
The mother-son bond is important, and I had lost that for some time. And she came into my life and reestablished that. She actually adopted me, and I call her mom.
Within this blended family, his new older sisters brought Austin into their hearts.
We got to spend some time together, and he shared with me about his life prior to us, and ever since then, very close. He was like so sweet to want to even be my brother. The fact that his heart was big enough to accept us says a lot about him.
By early 2011, Austin was a 6'6" standout sophomore at Canterbury High, already thinking about playing at the next level. One university stood out in his mind, the one his father cheered for, the one his late mother, Julie, had graduated from.
From an early age, I was taught to bleed maize and blue. The Michigan bond my mom and I shared, as well as the bond that, between me and my other family members was strong.
One night in February of 2011, Coach Beilein looked on as Austin went for 30 points and 16 rebounds.
I knew I was going to offer him a scholarship the moment I walked out of that gym.
He called me about 1:45 in the afternoon on June 15th, and I said, "I'd love to have you."
He says, "Can I accept right now?" And I said, "Are you sure? You want to sleep on this?" "No, I want to go to Michigan." I just knew this was a dream for him to play here.
There was a party at a local restaurant that night to celebrate.
The Beilein offense is, he kind of values the big shooter kind of guy, and I think I could fill in that offense pretty well for him. I've got a decent shooter, and I got some size, so I think that'll help.
We were all celebrating and being so loud that Dad bought everybody's dessert as an apology. There was a part where it was almost like he was a little kid, excited about it.
One of the proudest moments of his life of me. He knew what it took to get there and how much work and how much time I had to put in to make that dream a reality.
Nine days later, on June 24th, 2011, Dr. Hatch decided to fly with his wife Kim and Austin to their Michigan cabin. The plane left Fort Wayne at 5:30 p.m. Bad weather forced Dr. Hatch to divert to an airport in Charlevoix, Michigan. At 7:20, he was cleared to land.
911?
Yeah, we just had an aircraft crash just north of the airfield. It should be on the street just north of the airfield. It's just to the left of, oh my God.
Okay, was it coming into the airport or going out?
Trying to come in, but he was coming in the wrong way.
Breaking news out of Charlevoix County. You're looking at the aftermath of a plane crash. 2 people inside killed on impact. Another passenger in the back of the plane suffered serious injuries. We're not sure on the condition of that person.
I started walking and pacing the room, screaming, "There's no way this happened again. There's no way this happened again." I just remember feeling, how is my whole family gone? All the time that we put into making our new family and how much I loved my dad. I knew I was never going to get it back. And to think that my sweet, sweet parents were gone. And my next step was to get to Austin. I knew I had to get to Austin.
Well, we heard he was in a coma, that he was severely injured to his brain, and that he might never wake up, and even if he did, that he might never walk again or might never talk again.
The plane crash that killed Austin Hatch's parents had broken both of Austin's collarbones. He had rib fractures, holes in his lung, fractures of his sternum and his left hip, and a massive brain injury.
I got there and immediately walked in and lost it. Fell to the floor, was screaming. It's just too hard to see him unconscious, and wires left and right, everywhere from toe to head. Just not even knowing if he was gonna come out alive.
For 6 weeks, Austin lay in a medically induced coma. By July, his condition had stabilized, but he remained largely unresponsive.
He was in a wheelchair and he couldn't stand, and his head was supported and couldn't control movements. I couldn't believe that he survived for this. You've got to be kidding me.
When he was able to ask about his parents, Austin would receive the worst news imaginable.
What was it like to realize that you'd lost your dad and your mom?
Yeah, it's hard to put that into words. Losing a father who is not only your dad, but is also your best friend. And then going through a loss a second time, I kind of thought to myself, I thought I already had my loss.
Forgive me for asking this. Were you angry at your father?
Never, ever, never, ever. Never, ever. He was, as far as I'm concerned, Steve Hatch, my father, was the man of the millennium.
Steve Hatch's dream had been to see his son at Michigan, on the team. It was Austin's goal, too.
I had basketball in my future, and I realized how much work it was going to take for me to get there.
Yep. Within the first few weeks, he just kept improving.
Oh, that's good.
He said to me, I'm going to play basketball again. End of story.
The last time that I saw him, you're watching a guy running and dunking and doing that. Now you watch a young man that has trouble putting one foot in front of the other. And it's very sobering, very sobering.
For more than a year, he continued to rehab, back home in Fort Wayne with his sister Maria as his guardian. Then, for his senior year, Austin moved to Los Angeles in 2013 to live with his uncle Mike, who brought him to Loyola High School, and Coach Jamal Adams.
The whole goal really was to get away from the tragedy that he had survived and really put himself in his position to be as successful at Michigan as possible.
To train Austin, Rasheed Hazard, who'd rehabbed Kobe Bryant the year before, was brought in by Coach Adams with words he'd always recall.
He literally asked me, do you want to be a part of a miracle?
Snap, 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 snap. Keep it below the knee. Keep it below the knee.
For Austin and I, everything was about doing things with the proper mechanics and executing them the same way every time. And if there was one subtle difference, we did it again.
We spent a lot of mornings in the gym, 5:30, 6 a.m., getting work in.
He had this spirit about him that he could do anything. And he really believed it, and I believed it in him.
For months, they worked. Austin had not played in a game in nearly 3 years. Then, on January 8th, 2014, Loyola got out to a big lead.
I went down there and said, Austin, this opportunity to get in is today. And he was like, hell yeah, coach, it's time to go.
And so, on his first shot,
I'd envisioned that shot for a long time, since I got hurt, really.
What did it feel like when that ball went through the net?
Old times.
People ask me all the time, like, you know, what are your expectations for him at Michigan? And, you know, till the day that we die, I'll never doubt anything with Austin Hatch.
Austin James Hatch.
Austin would graduate from Loyola in June and head for Ann Arbor, where his Michigan scholarship awaited him and a spot on the team.
People keep thanking us or showing great appreciation for honoring this scholarship and doing all these things. I said, wait a minute, we're getting the blessing here. We're around a young man that is just incredible to be around.
He is a walking miracle. He just went full force, go big or go home, like Dad always said.
Austin Hatch has reached his destination, secure in the belief that he has never been alone, that his family will always sustain him.
I love you.
I love you too.
Those he has lost remain alive in his heart, guiding his progress as Austin continues on the most remarkable of journeys.
What do you think your parents would be proudest of?
I'm sure they'd be proud of me just being here, but I think they would probably be more proud of my outlook on life. They're still with me every day, still having a profound impact on the man I am and hope to become.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Great to be with you all today. I hope you and your families are all doing well and staying healthy. So that's my story, that video. That's part of my story. It's not my whole story, obviously, but I believe that we can overcome anything we put our minds to. I faced a couple of big ones with the two plane crashes that tragically took the lives of my family and almost took my life in the second one. Those were challenges. They were challenges, big obstacles. But I don't think we should allow anything just stand in the way of where we are and where we want to be. I think we just got to find a way to overcome it. We all face challenges every single day. We're all facing challenges right now with COVID-19 and everything else that's going on as a result. And for the athletes on the call watching, you all face challenges. I was once in your shoes. High school, the recruiting process, and when you get to college, the challenges will continue. But I think we can overcome anything we put our minds to. But what I realized early on, so after that second plane crash, tragically, it almost took my life. I had to learn how to walk again, right? And Coach Beilein from Michigan came to visit me at the RIC, the hospital in Chicago, the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, and he told me that he was going to honor my scholarship. And at this point, I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair, not because my legs were broken, but because my brain couldn't tell my feet to put one in front of the other, right? So I had a long way to go to get from where I was in that position in the hospital, not unable to walk, to where I wanted to be, playing on the team at Michigan. And I knew it was going to take some hard work. I knew it was going to take some perseverance and persistence, all those words. But more than anything, I knew it was going to take some grit to get from where I was to where I wanted to be. And grit's been talked a lot about. It's been talked about a lot these days. You know, it's been said that it's about working hard for the long-term vision, being consistent in your action, not just intense for a day or a week, but grit's about being consistent over the long term, over years. That's true. I like both of those definitions. Grit is hard work for the long term. It is consistency, not just intensity for a day or a week, but consistency over years, over the long term. That's true. But I realized for me, I needed something a little bit more specific that I could hold myself accountable to on a daily basis to make sure that I was giving myself the best chance to achieve my goal of getting to Michigan in the midst of the challenging circumstances that I found myself in. So to me, grit's 4 letters. There's 4 key components to it. But I believe first and foremost, grit's driven by working for a greater purpose. I think we need to work for something bigger than ourselves, because if anyone else on the call, anyone else in the world, if we're working just for ourselves, I think it's pretty likely that life is going to present us with adversity, opposition, challenge, trial, tribulation, what have you. Some obstacle that will cause us to give up or give in because we really don't have a driving force for why we do what we do. the driving force is different for everyone in the world, and I'm not one to tell you what your driving force should be. But I just believe that we need to have something that'll drive us to do what it takes to get uncomfortable and drive us to do what it takes to get the job done, regardless of our circumstances. You know, for basketball players on the call, or any athlete, there's things we have to do in sports, right? That aren't fun to do. You know, running suicides in practice isn't fun. Diving on the floor for loose ball in a basketball game is not fun. Taking a charge, sacrificing your body in a basketball game, that's not fun. But you do it because it's what the team needs. And I think there's things that we're gonna have to do in life in general that may not be fun, may not really show up on the stat sheet, but they make a big difference between winning and losing. And so I think for me, what I found to win, metaphorically speaking, against the adversity, to overcome it, I knew it was going to take some grit, and I knew I was going to have to be driven by a greater purpose. For me, that greater purpose was, I think we should all be somewhat internally driven to be the best that we can be. But for me, the greater purpose was, you know, honoring my family, and honoring all those who put their lives on hold to help me get better. That was my greater purpose. You know, if I had that thought, had both of those purposes in the back of my mind at all times, there's no way I was going to allow a circumstance or something beyond my control to determine the course of my future. And so I think that, you know, for all of us on the call, whether you're an athlete, whether you're the parent of an athlete, or whoever it may be, if we have something bigger in ourselves that drives us to do what it takes to get the job done, I think that's very important. So when you have that greater purpose, that'll drive grit, especially in the face of adversity. So the 4 components of grit, the first letter is G. G to me stands for the growth mindset. The growth mindset believes that every setback, every failure, every adversity is an opportunity. You know, the growth mindset believes that even when we inevitably fail or fall short of a goal, or miss our marks, don't make the team this year, or may not do as well in a class as we wanted to on this exam, the growth mindset believes that we can learn from that. We can get better in the future because of that experience. At Michigan, Coach Beilein would always come in the locker room after we would lose. We didn't lose that many games while I was there. But whenever we would, he would come in the locker room and say, yes, to be disappointed, of course. But then he would always say, we're going to watch the film of the game, and we're going to find a way to get better from it. We're going to watch the film of the game. We're going to review what happened, what went right, what went wrong, and then we're going to find a way to get better from it so we don't fall short for the same reasons in the future. So I think just having that growth mindset in any circumstance is so important. And I also think it's important to have the growth mindset when we lose, whether it's a literal loss, like in a competition, or it's just we go through something tough in life. I think having that growth mindset is so important because that'll enable us to turn the negatives into positives, if you will. So for me, you know, what I went through both times in 2003 with the loss of my mom and sister Lindsay, little brother Ian, it was terrible, right? Incomprehensible, that loss. And then to go through it a second time was incomprehensible again, you know, unfathomable. Both times were unfathomable. But not to separate the events from my recovery personally. And obviously the events impacted my whole family and everyone. So many people were impacted by the losses. But for me specifically, by being forced to adapt and being forced to find a way to overcome those challenges, I think the lessons I learned from the recovery from both events will be with me the rest of my life. And there's challenges today still, right? Whether it's business, whether it's marriage, whether it's family, whatever it is, there's challenges in life. But I think that by learning lessons, that by using the lesson that I learned the hard way, I think that those will be with me. And that's the way that we can kind of turn the negatives into positives. So for anyone on the call who's going through something, I think it's important to remember the tough days, because not only you'll remember what you learn, but you'll have a greater appreciation for when things are good, right? When you overcome it. Because for me, I remember the tough days, you know, the days in the hospital when I couldn't walk, the days when I realized that I tragically lost my family. Like it's incomprehensible. But if we remember those losses, remember those tough days, I think that'll give us a greater appreciation for where we are right now, for the opportunities we have, whether you're going to play a sport in high school or college or whatever the circumstance may be. I think it's important to remember those tough days because that'll give you a great appreciation for the opportunities that we have today as well. So I think having that growth mindset is so important. That'll enable us to take positives away from anything that we go through. And usually it's not going to be the event. It actually will almost never be the event that'll cause us to grow. I, of course, didn't grow from being involved in 2 tragic plane crashes, losing my family, and almost losing my own life in the second one. Of course, I didn't grow from that. But I do believe I grew from how it forced me to respond and how it forced me to find a way. And I think just having that growth mindset in any circumstance is so, so important. So when you have the growth mindset, that'll drive us to make the decision to be resilient. That's the R in grit. The R is the decision to be resilient. If we make that decision to be resilient, we focus more on our response to the adversity that we face rather than dwelling on the events that we can't control, rather than dwelling on the circumstances, the external events that we can't control. Because I realized early on, I couldn't control what happened to me. My injuries were what they were, tragically. I wish I could have controlled them, but unfortunately I couldn't. So I realized I need to spend my time and energy focusing on my response to the adversity we face. I think it was mentioned at the beginning in the introduction. Someone mentioned, that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to what happens to you. That's true. I like that idea. It's the right idea to me. I might be one to say that life is about 0.1% what happens to you and 99.9% how you respond to what happens to you. I hope that doesn't sound insensitive. But for me, with what I went through, obviously it was terrible. And I realized early on that I had no control over the circumstances. I couldn't go back, not now. Today it'll be 10 years in June, and tragically 18 years in September for the first accident in 2003. Unfortunately, I can't control those events. But I'm just going to have to focus on how I respond to those. So I think if we make that decision to be resilient, we spend our time and energy dwelling. We don't spend our time and energy dwelling on the events. We spend our time and energy focusing on our response, focusing on the things that we control. And as athletes, we're going to go through tough things. There's going to be tough games when we don't play well, or when our team as a unit, from a cultural standpoint, when we have challenges that we face. That's part of it. But I think we can always, and there's going to be times when the team, we're not executing the plays as well as we'd like to. Maybe we go through a losing streak. That's tough. It happens though. It's part of life. But I think there's no reason we can't control our response. We can't make every shot, literally or metaphorically speaking, and we can't always run every play perfectly. It's not going to happen. But we can always control how hard we play, how hard we play on defense, how good of teammates we are, and how we're there, and how we're there for our teammates. So I think really making that effort to be the best teammates that we can be is so important. I'll talk about this more in a few minutes as well. But if we're there for each other, whether it's parents there for your kids, or teammates there for each other, your brothers and sisters, I think, because that's a team is a family. And I think just making that decision to be resilient and realizing the fact that no one person can overcome the adversity by themselves. If it's a team that goes through something, one person can't help the team overcome it. It's going to take the buy-in of everyone on the team. And for me, my tragic circumstances involved in regards to both tragic plane accidents, I couldn't control either event. And, by the grace of God, I had my dad there with me after the first one, but we couldn't do it alone. So many people put their life on hold to help us get better. And everyone, offered to, contribute to our recovery to help us get through it. And then after the second one, especially I was the only survivor, fortunately and unfortunately. My whole family, everyone, put their lives on hold to help me get better. I couldn't have done it by myself. And so I think just realizing the fact that it's going to take a team to overcome any obstacle. It's going to take a team to be resilient. I think is really important. So if we make that decision to be resilient, we focus on our response. We focus on things that we control, our attitude, our work ethic, and our response to adversity. The third letter of grit is I. And I, to me, stands for integrity. Of course, we all know that integrity is about being honest, doing the right thing when no one is looking. Of course, that's true. But in addition to that, I believe that integrity is about following through on our commitments. I believe integrity is doing what we said we would do, especially when our circumstances change. Coach Beilein offered me a scholarship when I was playing at a pretty high level on June 15, 2011. He thought that there may be a chance that could help his teams win championships on the court by scoring, rebounding, playing defense, things like that. The second plane crash tragically happened 9 days later. I was almost killed. When I was, by the grace of God, I came out of that coma, and basketball was, on the back burner, way on the back burner. And that wasn't really even a concern. I wasn't really worried about playing basketball again. I was just worried about learning how to live my life again, being able to live life independently. But Coach Beilein came to see me in the hospital when I couldn't walk, and said that, he can't wait to have me on his team. I can't wait to have me involved in his program whenever I'm able to get to Michigan. Here, I was once a decent athlete, and here's a coach that has recruited, guys that are stars in the NBA now, like Duncan Robinson, Mo Wagner, Karis LeVert, right? These guys are stars in the NBA now. And here was a guy in me, I couldn't walk, right? So it's like, you talk about the character of that man, Coach Beilein, it's just unbelievable. And the integrity that he showed. Yeah, of course, a lot of coaches follow through on scholarships to players that they offer, right? When a coach offers a player a scholarship when he's in high school and he accepts it, most coaches and players end up going, the player ends up making it to that college and having a good career there, I hope. That's the usual circumstance. And mine were obviously unique circumstances. So for Coach Beilein, it's not just what he did for me. All the articles said, John Beilein follows through on the scholarship of Austin Hatch, a player that can't play. That's a really cool headline to read. Makes people feel good, I hope. But it's not so much about what Coach Beilein did for me. It's how he did it. It's not what he did. It's how he did it. And I think that applies to all of us in our day-to-day lives as well. It's not so much about what we do. It's about how we do it. And I'm reminded of, just the little things that Coach Beilein did for me. The fact that he included me in everything. And now look, I couldn't play, but I would go to practice and I would do what I can to help. I'd help with drills. I couldn't play with my teammates in practice because my injuries after the second accident prevented me from playing at the ability that I once could, playing at the level that I once could, excuse me. But coach gave me a role, help with drills, shag balls in practice, help rebound and do things like that, encourage my teammates. And if one of the other things that I could do was unload luggage on road trips from the bus to the plane, from the plane to the bus when we got to where we were going, and then from the bus to the hotel. If that's what I could do to help the team, is what I could do to help the team, right? And so I just felt that, if Coach Beilein is gracious enough and so I'm such an honorable man to honor my scholarship and follow through on his offer to me, I felt that I owed it to him to do whatever I could to help the team in the midst of the challenging circumstances that I find myself in. So I think just that having that integrity to always do what we said we would do, regardless of our circumstances, that's a way that I feel like we can, I can't guarantee that's going to help us achieve our goals. That will not guarantee that we do achieve our goals, but it can't make anything but a positive impact if we consistently make it a priority to follow through on everything that we commit to every single day, right? Because there's going to be days we don't want to go to practice. There's going to be days when, we've got other things on our plate, and we may not feel like we want to sacrifice our time and stuff for the team. But if we made the commitment to them, we owe it to them, right? And so all my teammates here, I'm sure there were days when they didn't feel like, encouraging me and listening and having me there when I couldn't play. I'm sure there were days when they didn't really feel like just being good teammates, but they always were. They're always encouraging, always positive. And so I think just making that simple decision to be positive, regardless of the circumstances, I think that's huge. And I think, like I said, just having that integrity piece, to always follow through what we commit to, regardless of our circumstances, we're doing whatever we can to fill our roles to the very best of our ability. That's going to help the team win. So the last letter of grit is T. And as I mentioned, T to me is that team first mentality. I think we should always think about the team first. We should train ourselves. I think we should remember that every person on every team has a role, and that role is very important. Otherwise, that person probably wouldn't be on the team. I had teammates who were stars of the team, like I mentioned before: Karis LeVert, Mo Wagner, Duncan Robinson, DJ Wilson, guys who are playing in the NBA now. They had bigger roles than me. I couldn't play. I scored 1 point in 4 years. In fact, I scored 1 point in 4 years. I actually have the proud title. I can actually almost guarantee you this. I'm not actually for sure, but just I feel like I can guarantee this. I'm probably the all-time lowest scoring basketball player who's on a full scholarship in Michigan basketball history. I don't know if I should be proud of that, but it is what it is. And I scored 1 point in 4 years. I scored 1 point in 4 years, right? but I did what I could to help the team. And there were times when I was discouraged and I felt, I can't play. It doesn't really matter if I don't take my role seriously. There were days I felt like that. I'm human. But then I was quick to remember if Coach Beilein is including me in this program, he's giving me a role, and my role is very, very important. Otherwise, it's not worth Coach's time to have me on the team. I think everyone on the call, the parents, the athletes who are going to listen to this now or later, every person on every team has a role. And I think we have an obligation to the team to make the effort to be the best that we can be at our role. Everyone has different roles. Like I mentioned to you before, I had teammates who were stars on the court, right? They're playing in the NBA now. They're really good in college. I scored 1 point in 4 years. If what I could do was shag balls in practice, unload luggage on road trips, rebound for my teammates and shoot around before games, and just be bring positive energy to the gym every single day. Hey, if that's what I could do, it's what I could do. One of my coaches, LaVall Jordan, he was an assistant coach while I was at Michigan. He's the head coach at Butler now. He said, Austin, there's two kinds of people in the world. There's energy givers and energy drainers. If you're not bringing energy, you're draining it just by being there. And the great thing is bringing energy takes no talent, takes no ability. Doesn't matter if you're able to play it like me. I couldn't play the level that I once could, but you don't have to have any ability to bring energy, to be positive, to encourage your teammates. That takes no energy. It's very much within our control. We can't make every shot, metaphorically speaking, but we can always control how hard we play and how good of a teammate that we are. So I think the amazing thing is everything we've talked about today, the being driven by something bigger than ourselves, that greater purpose, having the growth mindset, being resilient, operating with integrity, always following through on our commitments. And lastly, having a team first mentality. It takes no ability, and it's all 100% within our control. There are things in life that aren't 100% within our control, and that's fine. I understand that. Our circumstances aren't usually 100% in our control. Some things are, we put ourselves in the wrong position. And you know what? That's a learning opportunity as well. Some things we bring on ourselves, but usually our circumstances aren't in our control, but we can always control how we choose to respond to them. So, I think that just making that decision to be positive in the face of adversity, making that decision to just work for something bigger than ourselves, and just remember that, we can overcome anything we put our minds to. I think that's huge, because the reality is a lot of overcoming any challenge, it starts with a decision to overcome it. It starts with a decision to overcome it. It's a decision that we make to not allow our circumstances, to not allow things beyond our control to determine the course of our future. Look, my tragic circumstances have had their impact on me. There's always going to be an impact. Like, my family's tragically gone, and I would do anything and everything to bring them back, of course. But I have 100% control of how I choose to respond now, how I chose to respond then, and how we choose to live today. So I think we can't allow there have been two really terrible days that had a huge impact on my life. But I can't allow those two really bad days to outshine all the other great days that I've had. My incredible extended family, I think maybe some of whom might be on the call today. My incredible wife, like I'm so blessed. And you know what? There's going to be challenges. You're going to face challenges in college. If for those who go on to play college sports or high school sports, there's going to be challenges. But we can't allow those. Hopefully, there's more positives in our athletic journey than there are challenges. So we can't allow those challenges to outshine all the positives. And I think, and like I mentioned before, having the growth mindset, those challenges are opportunities to learn. So I think just making that decision to focus on our response to adversity and focus on how we're going to overcome, I think we can overcome anything we put our minds to. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share my story with you all today. I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the very best on your journeys. Thank you again. And I'm happy to take any and all questions, or however you want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Austin. Your story is incredible, and we're really honored to have you here with us today. So thank you. I think all of us are going to try and practice everything you said. I know we do have a couple questions. First one is from Robin. Were there any books or things you watched or your faith that kept your mindset focused when you were recovering or pursuing your goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there weren't really any books or anything that I've read, but my faith was huge, because I realized, my challenge, the circumstances were challenging, right? And I remember James 1, 2, and 3, which says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test." Excuse me, that's James 1, 9. That's the second verse I was going to say. James 1, 2, and 3 says, "Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance." We don't really consider it pure joy when we face a trial. I wasn't really joyful when I came out of that coma, realized that what had happened, realized all that I had lost. I wasn't joyful, but I realized it was an opportunity, and I realized that, you know what, if I just keep plugging away, if I am consistent in my action, if I work hard every single day, there's no way that I'm not going to overcome this. Because I think the reality is, I had this goal of getting to Michigan. From that, Coach Beilein came to see me in the hospital, as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. He came to see me in the hospital and told me he was on a scholarship, and that's awesome. But I couldn't walk at that point, so I had to learn how to walk first, right? Then eventually run, then eventually play in a basketball game again, right? Then and get back in the classroom, go and return to school, right? So there's I had this grand goal of getting to Michigan. But there's little goals, little boxes to check off along the way. And so I think for me, I found it more effective to just check off those little boxes along the way. Because if we check off enough of those little ones, the little boxes, if we accomplish enough little goals over a long period of time, I think we're going to put ourselves in a pretty good position to achieve the big one. It's kind of like what Coach Bakari Alexander used to say at Michigan. He was kind of the defensive coach at Michigan, and we would practice shell defense, like a defensive rotation drill. And so, but if you're not, and he'd always say, if you're not in the right position originally, you're never going to be able to get to the right help side position. So you got to put yourself in position to be able to get to the right position, right? So you can't, like, I couldn't get to Michigan if I didn't get back in the classroom in high school. I had to check off that box first, and that before I got to Michigan. So I think just, realizing that life is, we have these big goals, but there's a lot of little goals along the way, and just having your faith there. And also, I can't discount the fact that I had so many incredible family members and support. I had an incredible support system, and just so many people that helped me get better and helped me overcome, which I'm so grateful for. So,
absolutely. Austin, what advice do you have for athletes who are recovering from injuries or unable to practice in practices or games? You were in that position. What can athletes do to remain proactive?
I think the biggest thing that I learned, that I wanted to get back into a game right soon, but I wasn't ready. Be patient. Be patient, and the people say trust the process. But I also think it's good to be a little bit impatient too. Like, you kind of have to let your recovery run its course a little bit. But I think being a little bit impatient is not a bad thing either. Like, I want to get back into a game like tomorrow or next week. I don't want to get back into a game a year from now. I'm going to get there tomorrow. And so I think, but if we have that maybe we could call that healthy impatience, if you will. Having that, if we have that healthy impatience, we got to be willing to do the work that it's going to take to eventually get back to playing. Whether it's your rehab, if it's an ACL injury or a knee injury or whatever, or ankle, whatever it may be. Stay invested in your rehab. Take that very seriously. And I think one thing that I believe when I came out of the coma, and I had, was learning how to walk and talk and basically how to live life again, and eventually got back to work and play sports. I just kind of decided, you know what? I'm gonna make the best recovery that's ever been made in the history of level 7 traumatic brain injuries. I'm gonna do everything I can to. And for the people, if there's anyone on the call who's got a son or daughter or an athlete listening to this who's coming back from an ankle injury or a knee injury or whatever it is, just make the best recovery from a sprained ankle that's ever been made. That's what Coach Beilein would say every day. You'd say, today's going to be the best practice that's ever been had in the history of practices ever. And if you're gonna make a recovery why not give it everything we got? And, you know, my dad always told me, us, go big or go home. Go big or go home. If you're going to go after something, give it everything you got. Otherwise, it's not worth your time. It's not worth your time to go halfway. Go big or go home. And if you're going out, if you want to make a recovery and eventually get back to playing, just go all in. Go all in.
Great advice. Definitely great advice. Austin, I think all athletes have had all of us have bad days, but certainly athletes have bad days. They have a bad practice, maybe a rough game. I'm sure you had very difficult days in your recovery and you had bad games, I'm sure. How did you push through that, discouragement and keep pushing forward? I know it's always a proactive choice, but how do you not dwell on that negativity?
Well, it's easy to dwell on that negativity, right? It's easy to allow a bad game or a bad practice or whatever, or maybe things aren't going well with your coach or whatever the circumstance may be. Those are challenging times. And I, of course, had those, when I was playing sports, and then after the accident as well, in my recovery, there were challenging days. But I also remembered that, if I'm trying to make this great recovery, or for any of the athletes, if you're trying to make the team, if you're trying to be one of the stars of the team, or if you're whatever you're trying to do, if you have a lofty goal, there's going to be challenges. There should be challenges. And if you don't have challenges on your journey to accomplishing a goal, or your challenges, whatever, in any circumstance, I don't think we set a high enough goal. Because, I think there's a quote that says, one of the worst things you can do for yourself is set your goals too low and achieve them. And if you don't have challenges, I don't think your goals are set high enough. And so for me, I just believe that, setting lofty goals is great. But I think the other thing, though, one of the last lines of the cadet prayer, one of the things they say at West Point that I've read about is, it says, one of the last lines of that prayer, it says, Lord, help me choose the more difficult right over the easier wrong. Help me choose the more difficult right over the easier wrong. It's easy to allow ourselves to be the product. I don't want to say it's easy. It's easier to allow ourselves to be the product of our circumstances. It's easier to be negative. It's easier to be discouraged. And of course, there were times when I was discouraged. Of course, there were times when I had challenges in sports, but we can't allow those few challenges that we face or the discouragement to turn into something permanent. Because, like, for me in my life today, there's challenging things happen all the time. It's life and things happen, but I choose to focus on the positives. Like in sports, you know what? There's going to be challenges, but focus on the things that are going right. Focus on the great teammates that you have. Focus on, right, the fact that you get to play a sport that you love. And I think a lot of things come back to gratitude. Just because if we're grateful for things, if we're grateful for the opportunity to be on the team, if we're grateful for, for me, for the opportunity to be in this business, there's going to be challenges. The remote environment has posed challenges, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to impact any audience in any way, be it like with any platform, whether Zoom or live or whatever it may be. So I think if we're grateful for things, we may not be grateful for our recovery, for our injury, but if we're grateful for the fact that we can make a great comeback, I think we'll be much more likely to do what it takes to get the job done.
Absolutely. As you know, today's National Student Athlete Day. And I'm sure there are many student athletes tuning in right now. You, as a former collegiate student athlete, had to juggle a lot, especially coming out of a recovery like you did. What's your advice to student athletes, how to manage the balancing of being an athlete and being a student?
Well, I think it comes down to priorities, right? Because we've all heard the saying, we all have 24 hours in a day. It's how you choose to spend it, right? So if you've got 3 hours of practice one day, plus a weight session, plus a film session, plus whatever else, and then you got a few hours of class or homework or whatever it may be, we got to make sacrifices. We can't always do the fun stuff, like do the thing, like go out with our friends or whatever it may be. We got to make sacrifices. And I think just learning, just to enjoy, for me, I think it's just enjoying the process. Like, because if you have this goal of winning a championship on the court or the field, whatever your sport you play, court, field, pool, tennis court, whatever. If you have this goal of winning a championship, we're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices to put ourselves in position to do that. Kind of how I talked about with Coach Alexander a few minutes ago about you have to be in the right position to get to the right help side position on defense. There are things we can do in life as athletes outside of sports to put ourselves in position to be in position to achieve our goals, to win the championships, to have the great season, to have the great game, right? Maybe you got a game versus your rival tomorrow. It's probably not in your best interest to go out with your friends tonight or go to a party or whatever the circumstance may be. So I think there are little things that we can do to put ourselves in position to be in position to whatever that result is, whether it's winning a championship, having a great game, having a great season. So just remember that, what the ultimate goal is. Because if the ultimate goal is to have a fun Friday night or to have a fun time with your friend, obviously having friendships is very important. And I'm not saying it's not. But if the ultimate goal is to win the championship, you might have to sacrifice that party for one night. So
Definitely. Well, I think all of us will be practicing some grit and gratitude lately. So thank you so much for sharing your story and spending time with us today. Thank you, everyone who tuned in and submitted questions. Happy National Student Athlete Day again. Please join us this evening at 8 o'clock Eastern and 7 p.m. Central for our final speaker, WNBA athlete Amani McGee Stafford. We hope to see you then.